However you are and whenever you are, welcome, good souls, to Paranormal Now. I'm Alan B. Smith. Join us as we traverse the cosmic highway of paranormal portals and tantalizing turnoffs. Joining me tonight, I have two guests. So we're going to cover the gamut of paranormal investigations with our first hour guest, Rick McCallum, and second hour guest, Paul Eno. And we'll get their two different perspectives on the paranormal phenomena called ghosts, poltergeists, and life after. What is the evidence, and what has been found to support the assertion that our souls continue on after death? Yes, there's some evidence that we have all seen, but I think it's the people that are in the field, who are out there living it and breathing it. They are the ones that have their pulse on the phenomena, and whether they think it's real or not is arguably subjective, but I should hope mostly objective. But we'll find out from Rick in just a moment. For all those listeners of Paranormal Now, if you are a fan of coffee like I am, the Alien Coffee Bean discount code for this channel, if you go to aliencoffeebean.com, is a mystery 20. That's mystery 20. So go to alienbean.com, coffee.com, enter the discount code, and you can get the most delicious, out of this world coffee that that I personally love very much and can't live without. Please follow me on social media at Paranormal Now Radio on Facebook, at Paranormal Now on Instagram, and at Paranormal_Now on Twitter. And if you're listening to the podcast, please consider jumping over and checking out the YouTube channel here. You can subscribe, like, comment down below to help support the channel, or on the podcast, if it's iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcasts, please consider writing a review, comment, liking, and of course subscribing. I'd really, really appreciate that. It would help with the SEO feed and getting attention and getting this podcast out there to as many people as we can. In the last 30 minutes, we will also open up the Skype call-in line. So that link is in the show description. I'll also drop it into chat on YouTube and Facebook as well. And furthermore, if you'd like to support this program and get extra content, please consider supporting me on Patreon. I put that link in the description below. Patreon.com and then the Paranormal Pop extension. All right, so our guest is Rick McCallum. He has been a professional stuntman, actor, and stunt coordinator for over 35 years and has more than 75 movie and TV projects to his name. He has been in many horror movies, most notably Hatchet 2, where he is chainsawed in half by his best friend Kane. Hey, what are friends for? He frequently played monsters for paranormal characters. He has stunt doubled for many well-known actors, including Barry Bostwick, Oliver Platt, Christopher Noth, and Greg Evigan, among many others. Rick's real passion is the paranormal, which began at the age of 13 and has been a lifelong pursuit. Rick, it started around 12 for me. While working on a movie in Manfield's Reformatory, a very haunted prison in Ohio, he and Kane Hodder, Jason Voorhees, Friday the 13th, Part 7, 8, 9, and 10, discovered a mutual interest in the paranormal and founded the Hollywood Ghost Hunters. You can find out more about Rick at rickmccallum.com. Rick, welcome to Paranormal Now.
Well, thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming on. Yeah. So you've got quite the resume. So it seems like you've jumped into the paranormal enigma from an entertainment perspective and from an actual investigator perspective. Which one have you found more exciting or more thrilling?
Oh, the investigating, without a doubt. I mean, it's not even close. One's fantasy and one is something that's possibly real. So,
but isn't that the kind of the question, like what is real when you're out there investigating? Because the fantasy aspect can feel just as real as anything else. So when you're in the field, how do you distinguish something that's just your imagination, excitement, something misunderstood, and the real deal?
Well, you can easily be misunderstood, especially with EVPs, the electronic voice phenomena. Um, but you do also get really interesting things on EVPs. I really like to use the FLIR thermal imager because you can't fake heat, right? You can't fake cold. So I like to use those. I use the K2 meter, and I've gotten some phenomenal interaction. So I've been doing this for a long, long time. I started when I was 13, and this right here, this isn't paint. This is the real deal.
Oh, you didn't dye your hair for the show tonight, Rick?
Well, I probably should have. But no, I've ghost hunted, in Australia, Switzerland, Puerto Rico, the Bahamas, Scotland for months at a time. I'm actually a member of Scottish Paranormal. Ireland, England, and I've seen so many different things. And first off, I could tell you, if you ever go over to overseas like Scotland and things, the intensity of the ghosts there is much higher than it is here.
See, I always kind of thought that maybe that was a media perception, right? That there was something going on over there in those old castles, and it was just the enchantment of such locale and these old buildings. But do you really think that there's more ghost activity over there?
Oh, it's unquestionable. I mean, it's absolutely unquestionable. I mean, I've had so many things. I've been slapped in the back of the head at Balgony Castle. I mean, I've had so many things happen to me that are above the norm, so that I have no doubt that they're real. I mean, I've gotten some EVPs that were very good. I've got things on film that are very good. Had one of the weirdest things ever happen with the thermal imager. So, matter of fact, I'll tell you what it was. A lady called me up and said her house was haunted. So I went over and I went all through. She had a loft apartment, went all the way through it, not a thing. So I said, Donna, I don't think your place is haunted. She goes, oh, I don't either. And I'm like, what? Why did you call me? Right? She goes, I think something's attached to me. Now,
that's different.
Yeah. And I didn't know exactly how to quantify that. Right. I've had things that attach to me and I know what it feels like and things like that. But how to quantify it was kind of a mystery. So I just figured, she just wants to feel better. So I'm going to take some equipment, run it over, show her that there's nothing there. Right. So I took out my night vision camera and, did that. Nothing. I took my K2 meter, nothing. And then I remembered that I just bought a FLIR. Right. So I said, well, let me try this. And I took, put it up there and I went, uh-oh. Because she had about a football-sized black spot right in her stomach on the right side of her stomach. And that is always like really, really cold. And that is generally what will tell you it's probably a spirit. Well, I actually had her go upstairs and walk back down to make sure it wasn't a camera anomaly. And it's still, you can see it as she's coming up and down the stairs. I had her twirl. It's still in the same place. So
it tracked with her.
Yeah, exactly. It stayed everywhere, stayed exactly where it started. And she says, well, how do I get rid of this? I said, well, tell it to go away. I said, you're the master of your own body. And she goes, well, should I get mad? I said, yes. And she goes, how mad? I said, pretend you just found your boyfriend having sex with your sister. And she goes, oh, that mad? I said, yeah, then some. I said, throw it out and don't be nice about it. And she says, can I use my faith? And I said, sure, can't hurt. And the stupidest thing I didn't have ever done was I didn't film her, right? And I was watching to make sure she was okay. And she put everything she had into it. She threw her little fists over her head and she's going, the power of God commands you. And I'm like, and she's going, get out, get out. And I mean, she was so sincere, I almost left. Right. So after she was done, I let her calm down for about, a couple minutes. And I looked at her with the FLIR again and the black spot was gone. So it's awfully hard to explain.
I think that it's about probability. This has been in my mind as of late. You can see an event, experience something, and one thing might be seemingly unexplainable, but maybe you can explain it away. But then you add another factor, and then a third, and a fourth, and a fifth, and then it becomes highly unlikely that this is just coincidence or some explainable down to earth anomaly. I'm sure plenty of people would disagree with me, but I think it certainly leaves the door open because what is the likelihood that you would have recurring close encounters with entities or spirits, whatever you call them? In fact, what do you call them, Rick? What do you think these entities are?
I usually call them spirits because I like to think of them being spiritual beings still here. So, I mean, I've also called them ghosts, but I usually, when I refer to them, I call them spirits. But you're asking about recurring evidence. I've been out to the Pioneer Saloon out near Las Vegas multiple times. And there are two ladies and there are two spirits, female spirits, Ruby and another one. They think it might be Carol Lombard, but I don't know if that's the case. But I know Ruby was murdered in that place, and Carol Lombard's body was in there after she was in the airplane accident. And Clark Gable waited 3 days inside the bar for them to bring her down. But every time I go there, the female voices call my name out loud where people can hear it, right? And they also come on in the EVPs. And it's so funny because I have this on film too, where I go in and the girl says, "Who's here with me?" And the REM pod goes off and the K2's going off. And then you hear through the speaker comes out, "Ruby." Now that's the girl who got killed, right? And I said, "Hi, Ruby." And she goes, "Rick." So every time I go there, I mean, if you look on the back of my book, the girl talks, she says, "He's been here 6 times, and every time we've heard his name called." So that I would say is a recurring thing. And it's kind of like you've almost made a relationship with the spirit. So to me, that's fascinating.
Rick, I'm just going to play this audio clip that you sent me. It's 6 seconds long. Can you set us up with that?
Well, you're talking about the two of them?
Yes.
Okay. I was actually with one of my guys, not Kane or RA, but another one of my guys. And we were at this famous magician's house. One of the things, we can't say the name of it, but he's about the most famous magician ever, right? So anyway, we were at his house and we walked into the basement. As we walked by, this huge black shape went across the wall. Well, I'm 6'4" and I weigh about 240. And my friend that was with me is a little shorter than me, but he's about 280. So we can cast a pretty good shadow when we walk next to each other. So I had us go back and we kept going in. We couldn't cast any shadow whatsoever. So we went in there and there were 2 beds. And when we walked in, I went to the far bed and I put down my K2 meter and the voice recorder. And I went over and I sat down on this futon. Well, my friend Ed picks up the K2 meter and he walks into the bathroom and you'll hear him say, "I'm going to get a bass reading." And then probably like 3 seconds, 4 seconds after that, you hear a very loud "no," very insistent. So you could play that and you'll see what I'm talking about.
Take a bass reading.
Right. Let me play that again.
Take a bass reading. Take a bass reading.
So that second audio, did you run that through a filter?
Actually, I had the guys from Scottish Paranormal bump it up because if you listen to the first one, and here's a story. I was on the bridge right next to Rosslyn Chapel and Rosslyn Castle about, midnight. And one of the guys from Anubis Paranormal in England was over there and he asked me if I had any EVPs. And I played him the first one. And he goes, "Mate, that's incredible." I said, "Yeah, the no." And he goes, "No, what it says right before there." I said, "What?" I never heard anything but it said before that. And he says, "It says 4 words. It says, 'Get back here, punk.'" Right? So if you listen to the first one again and listen really carefully, you'll hear it.
Okay, let's play it again. The first one, right?
The first one where it's quieter.
Okay.
Take a bass reading.
Now, did you hear it?
It was really faint.
Right. So I had the guys at Scottish Paranormal bump it up for me. So they bumped it up so everybody can hear it. So it's kind of loud, but it's pretty clear what it's saying.
Take a bass reading.
So there you can hear it. Yeah.
Yeah. Get back here.
Okay. So what are we actually hearing? there's so many theories out there. What does Rick McCallum think that those voices are? How is this even possible?
Well, I'll tell you what it was. It was the spirit that was in there, because this spirit that we interacted with was just angry as all hell. And we started trying to figure out who it was, and we said the name of the magician, and we said the magician's wife and the other people who'd lived there. Mm-hmm. And then Ed asked, because they had told us that it used to be a quartz mine, and he said, "Are you a miner?" And it went all 5 lights right on the K2 meter. So once again, we always ask twice. I said, "Are you the miner?" And it goes again. So I said, "Okay." So he goes, "It's a miner." And I said, "Wait a minute." So we went back through all the names again. No, nothing came on. And when we got to the miner again, it went all 5 lights, right? So you could feel the presence in there. This thing did not want us there, right? I said, "Let me know you're here," right? And it goes all 5 lights. I said, "Look, do you want us to leave? If you do, hit all 5 lights right now." And bam, instantly, all 5 lights. So I looked over to Ed and I went, "Wow, that was pretty interesting." And I said, "Do it again and we'll leave." And instantly, all 5 lights again. So I'm pretty sure, by the way, the interaction between the voices and what was happening on the K2 meter was a spirit there that was angry that we were there. So we got thrown out.
Kicked out. Well, what is that makes up the voice? How is it even possible that spirits from in another dimension or the other side or whatever are able to communicate through our devices?
Well, they're able to communicate without the devices too, because I've heard my name called out many, many times. So most people think that they just communicate on a different level that we can't hear, but the recorder can. Mm-hmm. So, but other times too, you can hear them out loud with your own ears.
There must be measures that you take to have more control, right? So that you're not getting interference, or how do you manage that?
Well, it's just a simple thing of knowing where you are. A lot of times you'll be out, there'll be a bunch of people, and you'll get these different voices in there, and you have to totally discount them because there's too many people around. But when there's 2 of you and there's 3 voices, something else is going on.
I mean, but what about something like a hand radio nearby? Could that cause it, or
no? Ham radio is a broadcast signal, and I've never picked up any radio things on my voice recorder. I've never picked up anything like that. So I don't think that would be the case.
Okay. What do you think? Why are they still here, and why are they communicating to us?
Well, my personal belief is that there's a couple of reasons. One is a lot of people who die suddenly, they don't know they died. And you can actually get that from them, when you're talking to them through the K2 or sometimes on the voice recorder. And then again, there's others that just don't want to try the trip, to go to the light, and I don't know why, afraid of, what might be coming or anything like that. So, and there's also sometimes there's another spirit that won't let them leave. And I've had experiences with that at Sloss Furnace. So there's all kinds of different reasons they could be here.
Is it ever emotional for you? Have you ever had, and yes. What was the cause of that?
Well, I'll give you a quick story. I went out to Malibu. A friend of mine said that her place was haunted. And I went out there, and Kane was there, and a whole bunch of people showed up, which made it impossible to ghost hunt. And finally, when they'd all left, there was just me and the lady who invited me and her friend. And we started talking, and I kept saying, we didn't get anything in this house. Nothing. Zip. Right? No noises, nothing on the meters, nothing on the voice recorders, nothing. So I asked her, I said, "What makes you think this house is haunted?" I said, "Did anybody ever get killed here?" Now we're standing in the kitchen, right? And the house right next to her is like maybe 10 to 12 feet away, and it's their kitchen. And she says, "Well, no, the lady next door got stabbed to death by her son right in that window." And I went, "Well, do you know the lady's name?" And she goes, "Yeah." And I said, "Ask if she's here." And she said, "Are you here?" And it went, bam, 5 lights, right? So we started all 5 lights on the K2 meter, which means that's the highest rank. That's the strongest one you can get. So I started asking, can you do this? Can you do that? I finally was able to, by, yes and no answers, figure out that there was a man who wanted to cross over. Now, I'd never tried it before, but I figured, hey, he wants to go. I'm going to give it a shot. So I told him, I said, can you see the light? And, the K2 went off. I said, okay, from what I understand, go towards the light, right? I said, you understand? And he goes, all 5 lights. So the 2 girls are standing there watching this, and they're kind of getting a little freaked out a little bit. So I said, are you going towards the light? And it goes again. I said, okay, I want to see the lights on this go down because I want to know you're going to the light, right? Mm-hmm. And it goes to 3 lights, right? I said, are you there? And it went to 2 lights. And I said, okay, so I know you're right there. I said, can you give us a sign that you made it, right? And the girl that was on my left went, right? And I heard something too. And I just looked at her, and everybody knows when you're ghost hunting, you never say, I heard this. Did you hear it too? Because they'll just parrot whatever you said, right? So I looked at her, I said, you heard something, didn't you? And she goes, yeah. I said, what did you hear? She goes, I heard a man's voice. And I said, I did too. What did it say? And she looked at me, and you could tell that this was something earth-shaking that she was feeling. And she just looked at me, and she goes, he said goodbye. I said, I know, I heard it too. And I mean, that still sends shivers up my spine thinking about it.
No, if a ghost says goodbye like that, is that it? I mean, do they never hear from them again?
Well, there's a train of thought that says ghosts are earthbound, right? They haven't crossed over yet. Spirits have crossed over, and they're like your grandmother who comes back to you sometimes when you need solace or there's something, bad happening. That is a spirit. So could they come back? Could you still communicate with them? Yes, but generally they don't just wander around. When they go across to the other side, they stay there unless it's right. Now, I can tell you that I've seen my dad, who has helped me twice in dire situations, and he's been dead for 25 years. So weird things happen, and it's the most fascinating thing. That's why, I wrote a book. I don't know if you know that. It's called Ghosts Believe in Me. And it won the 2020 Paranormal Awards Book of the Year, so I'm pretty proud about that. But there's a lot of stories like this, and I mean, a ton of them. And so many people have gotten hold of me and say, that same thing happened to me. So
it's the cumulative reports that just make this utterly fascinating for me. Why the title of the book?
Well, I was doing a show like this, and I didn't have a good host like you, right? And this guy asked me, I'm going to be on this show for 2 hours, right? Mm-hmm. The very first question he asked me, and he asked me very snarky, he goes, you don't really believe in ghosts, do you? Mm-hmm. And I said, all right, want to play this game? All right, how about 2 hours of dead air? And I'm thinking to myself, I said, no, I don't. And you could just hear like the gulp from the host. What am I going to talk about now, right? And he goes, you really don't believe in ghosts? I said, no. But fortunately, ghosts believe in me. And the people that were all listening to that all sent me messages on Facebook and stuff like that. So I just figured, all right, that's just going to be the name of the book, because I have people say so much they've never seen a person that attracts ghosts like I do. And it's really kind of true.
Well, good for you. That was a good clapback. I like that.
Yeah. No. I figured he's going to go, what? Wait, what? Huh? This guy's going to be on 2 hours and he doesn't believe in ghosts. So,
well, I suppose that happens, right? There are people who kind of want to lead you to believe that they believe, and then try to, get you the gotcha questions.
Happens all the time.
So, we don't do that on Paranormal Now, but you have to ask challenging questions, because otherwise, how can we take this seriously, right?
Yeah, well, I always say to the challenging questions, bring it. If I know the answer, I'll tell you. I'll give you my opinion, but I can't. Just like you said earlier, everything about ghost hunting is subjective, right? It's all basically conjecture. But what you can do is you can build yourself a little pile of things that are happening all around, put them together, and the sum of the parts is much better than just all the parts by themselves, if that makes sense. You can make a good argument after you said, well, this happened, this happened, this happened, and they're all related, so yeah.
Well, you were a part of of many parts that made up the sum of a documentary called Sounds of the Dead, EVP, that we were both in and that I helped co-produce. And I was saying to you before the show that if it felt like I kind of knew you, even though we'd never spoken before, but that you edit it together in such a way, and I guess that has something to do with that sort of kindred spirit of attraction towards this strange world we call the paranormal.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and Tony Rathman, I'm sure.
Very, very well. Matter of fact,
Yeah.
I got to do something. Do you know Dylan?
Sure.
His son?
I don't know Dylan, no.
Dylan just turned 15, and I had done a thing at the Phelps Dodge Hospital, which Tony Rathman used to be the caretaker for. And we went down there and we did a live stream. And while I was doing it, Dylan was there, and I pulled him in because I had my FLIR out, and I was looking right outside the nursery, and something the size of a baby was crawling on the ground on the FLIR. So I wanted somebody else to see it besides me. You send this. I said, Dylan, look at this. And he goes, oh, that looks like a baby. So I took him in. I had him sit in the nursery with me, and I gave him the K2 meter. I said, start asking questions. And he was getting bang, bang, bang answer one after the other. Yeah. And finally it stopped. And then I said, do you want us to go now? And he goes, right. And I said, do it again and we'll leave. So it goes again. And Dylan goes, what are we going to do? I said, we're going to leave. I told him we were going to, so off we went. But Dylan and I are going to be doing another show down at the Globe jail. And it's going to be a live event. It's going to be on February 25th. And I think it's only like $5 to watch the whole thing. So, I mean, it's pretty cheap.
Yeah, if you have a link, shoot me in the chat here, and we'll send that out into the comments on YouTube and Facebook as well. So we're going to go to our first break. We'll be back on the other side with Rick McCallum, and I'll be asking Rick what he hopes to see and what he expects passing will be like. This is Alan B. Smith for Paranormal Now on the Paranormal Pop YouTube channel. We will be right back on the Inverted Upside Down.
Tell me why, with 12 sides, the odds are that we die, roll the die, as you hide, I can't find you on the other side of the lines.
This coffee is delicious. Is that a UFO? I'm actually seeing a UFO. This coffee is awesome. That's why they call it alien coffee bean. Is this even made on Earth? Hey all. Paranormal Now will be syndicated on the UnX network, the new mainstream, where you can find your favorite hosts and shows on the cutting edge of ufological and paranormal news and topics. Listen for Paranormal Now rebroadcast on the X at 2 a.m. EST Fridays, 11 p.m. PST Thursdays at unxnetwork.com.
And again, the signs keep on coming, they point to the end, but I hold on so tight.
Welcome back to Paranormal Now. This is Alan B. Smith, your grateful host on youtube.com/paranormal pop. We are also syndicated on KUNX Radio, the X, and that will be playing later tonight, 2 a.m. Fridays on KUNX. I'm very excited. Thank you to Margie K and to Race Hobbs to bring me on board. It's a very exciting new platform, and it's already exploding. So Rick, we're back, and I really, really appreciate paranormal investigators' perspective on the other side, but what they think they can expect. Because I suspect that other than someone who maybe had a near-death experience, in the real world, you have the closest look into that and can garner those special clues.
Well, I actually had a chance to get a lot closer to that than I wanted to. We'd been at the Hellfire Club. Me and Scottish Paranormal had been at the Hellfire Club in Dublin, Ireland. And as we were leaving, two of the ghost hunters were saying they were having a pain in their right eye. And then it subsided and it didn't go, nothing happened. Well, we drive over to Leap Castle, which is one of the most famous places in the world for ghost hunting. So is Hellfire Club for that matter. But as we got there, it was really cold, it was windy, and we were about an hour early. So we had to sit out on the road out in front of the castle because they were having a party inside. And we all got out, and, guys that have been in a car for like an hour, we went to do behind bushes and stuff to do things. I didn't. I was just standing by the car, and they said, "Come on, get in." I said, "No, man, it feels really good. It's, it's cold and the wind's blowing. This is cool. I grew up in Chicago. It is like being home, right?" So anyway, they get back in the car, and I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden, I felt like a spear. The way I described it was a spear went through my eye and out the back of my head, and I could actually feel it go. And I grabbed my eye, and water started gushing out from underneath my hand. And I thought, oh, geez, my eyeball exploded. That was the only thing that popped into my head. And I started staggering backwards, right, trying to keep my balance. And I looked down at the road, and I went, "Rick, you've been doing stunts for forever. Just fall down before you have to, right? You can control this." And I started to fall down, and I heard a voice say, "If you hit the ground, you'll never get up." So guess what I did? Switched gears. I did everything I could to stay up, and I staggered back to the car. And I mean, I was in a lot of pain. Grabbed onto the side of the car, and one of the guys had seen me out of the rearview mirror. They were facing the other direction. And he runs out and he grabs me, and he takes me behind the car, and he gives me some water, and he goes, "Come on, get back in." I said, "No, man, leave me out here. I'm wobbly and head was still woozy." And I said, "The cold air and the wind will make me feel better." So one of the things I did in the book, which I think gives it a lot of value, anybody else that was where something really cool happened, I let them tell their version also, instead of just me telling a story. Because frankly, any author can write anything they want if there's nobody else to, put in their version. So Ali Reed, who's one of the Scottish Paranormal guys, he put in, he says, he didn't see me. So he jumped out of the car, and I was hanging off the car by one hand. And he says, I was like real white, and he could tell I wasn't breathing because I was going, right. So he lifts me up and he holds me up, and he said, this is really weird. He said, the first thing he saw when I was hanging on it, and he said, if Rick hits the ground, he'll never get up. So it's the same thing I heard in my head. So that's kind of weird. But they put me in the car, and we drove to the front of the castle. Meantime, they went inside, and they told the Lord of the Manor, saying, "How long would it take to get an ambulance out here?" And they said, "Well, it's a ways away." And they said, "Why?" And they said, "Because we think Rick is dying." Well, meanwhile, out in the car, my vision starts going like this, right? And I'm like, "Oh no!" Right? And I'm just sitting there, and I got no energy. And then the famous iris thing they used to do at the end of the movies, closes in on itself. That was always the end. My vision started doing that, and I went, "Oh shit! I know what that means," right? So I'm sitting there, and as I'm sitting there, I felt my energy go boom. I mean, like, when you flush the toilet on an airplane, just yep. Boom, gone. So I'm leaning back in the car, and I'm looking out the window, and I'm like, wow, this is it, right? And I mean, when that happens to you, and I hate to sound melodramatic, but that you're on your way out. And what's really funny is it's very peaceful. Instead of fighting it and going, no, it's just like, okay, right? So I just said out loud, I've got to do a lot of things nobody else has. I got to go to most every place I ever wanted to go. And if today is my day, I'm okay with it, right? And I just leaned back, and I was relaxing, and I figured a minute or two more, and I'm done. And all of a sudden, my energy started flooding back into me, right? And I was like, wow, what's going on? And the guys came out, and they helped me out of the car, and I was starting to feel better. I went and I sat down for about a half an hour, and I was fine after that. But I mean, it was so intense. This thing is so hard to talk about. But the weirdest thing in the world was about 2 to 3 weeks later, one of the guys called me up and said, "You're not going to believe what we found out." I said, "What's that?" And they said, there was a duel at the Hellfire Club. One guy got shot through the right eye and died. So what I think is that spirit attached to me. And I was seeing everything that happened to him and feeling it. And I think the only reason that I didn't go toes up was because when I said, if today's my day, I'm okay with it. I think the spirit went, no. I just want somebody to know. I don't want you to join me. Right.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we have a comment from Tony Rathman. Thank God that didn't happen.
Yeah. Thank God it didn't happen. But I tell you, it's so hard to tell people that, because unless you experience it, you don't understand what I'm saying. That you just have a total peace. It's just like, okay.
But where does that peace come from? I mean, is that just our body sending, chemicals, to like dropping, I don't know, an extra dose of DMT, dimethyltryptamine, and just pushing us off into a safety space before it's all over? Or is that peace coming from somewhere else?
I think it's coming from somewhere else, because right after I said that, all of a sudden I started getting the energy back. And if it was actually sending energy to, it was kind of indicative of what it might have been. So
yeah.
I think it was just the spirit let go of me and my own body just reacted and started coming back. But
what was the voice that you heard? Where was that coming from? The warning.
I have no idea. And the fact that Allie also heard it,
did it have like a familiar ring to it? Was there something?
No, it was just a regular voice, and it might have been my voice in my head, right? But that doesn't explain what Allie heard. So it had to be something that was connecting with both of us. So, but it was just straightforward. If you hit the ground, you'll never get up. No drama, nothing else, just a straight statement. And you get one of those, you kind of should ought to believe it, take heed.
Yeah, there's something to be said about that, actually. I feel like if you get a statement like that and it's calm, it's straightforward, I think that's helpful, because in the split-second decision making that you have to do, it helps prevent you from panicking and thinking more level-headed. Because people's voices, it's a vibration, it's energy, it's music, and when someone talks to you, it can help you calm down, right? So obviously, if some spirit from the other side was screaming at you, "Get the hell," that in itself might be a surprise and scare you for a moment, just the voice, which would delay you a split second that you need to make that decision.
Well, if I may relay another story, because I think it really plays in with this. My dad and stepmother lived in Nashville, and we had a family business, and they were going to go on a vacation for a month, and they asked me to come back and watch the house and run the business. And I said, okay. So I had my car stolen, a 280ZX. And in the meantime, I bought another one. And then in the meantime, after that, they found the damn car, right? I said, I got two cars, right? So I said, you know what? I'm just going to drive the 280 back to Tennessee, because it had Tennessee plates, be easier to sell. So I drove back there, and they had gone, and they were going to be like going all over the place. So I wasn't going to hear from them very often. Well, my dad lived in a real upscale neighborhood where he was up on a hill. And to get into the garage, you had to go downhill into the garage. Yeah. So it was basically kind of underground, except for you could see the front of it. But anyway, I decided, you know what? I had a couple people say they were interested in the car, and I had bought oil. So I said, you know what? I'm going to change the oil for whoever's going to buy this. So I got the oil pan and the ratchet, and I jacked up the car, went underneath, had the ratchet on there, and I'm trying to get it off, and it's really stuck. And I'm starting to get a little ticked off about the whole thing. And I hear a voice, and I don't mean in my head. I heard it, right? And it said, "Let it go." And I was like, somebody's in the house, right? So I slide out from underneath the thing, and I look around. I go upstairs. We had 4 dogs. They're all sleeping, so there's not anybody up there. Went back down. I opened up the door, and it was probably like 11:30 at night. And opened up the garage door and looked out. There's nobody around. Right? So, okay. So I closed the door, and I just, you're hearing stuff, right? So anyway, I crawled back under the car. Now you got to remember, a 280ZX is a very low slung car, right? It's only like that high off the ground, right? So I get back under there and I'm like, you son of a gun, I'm getting you off this time. And I put the ratchet on there and I go like this and I hear, let it go. I mean, just like that. I was like, what the hell is going on?
Serious,
right?
yeah.
So I slid out from under the car, and as God is my witness, right? As soon as I slid out from the car, the edge of the car fell off the jack, and the edge of the car went through the hair on my head. So if I didn't have a little intervention there, I'd be deader than a doornail.
Well, you're a stuntman, right? So
I can't hold up a car for a month.
No, but I'm sure that you've had your moments of fear, right?
Oh, yeah.
Over the years.
More apprehension than fear, actually, to tell you the truth.
Have you ever been, aside from these moments, in really real danger, where you didn't have a voice to help you out, where you, Rick, had to make a quick decision?
Yes, and it's kind of strange. I had a recurring dream all along about a man coming into a restaurant and then shooting me when I was in the bathroom. And I mean, I had it for years. Mm-hmm. And so finally I was back in Chicago, and I figured I told everybody, I said, I'm going to die when I'm 29, because that's how old I was when I got shot and died in the bathroom. Because I remember spinning and falling and hitting the tile and just seeing the guy's legs and stuff. And I seen the gun come in again, and that's the end of the story. Right.
Yeah.
I was sitting there in this place, a Mexican restaurant where I used to go get tacos all the time. And it's like 95 degrees out. And I'm sitting there and I look up in the mirror and I see this guy coming in the door, and it's the guy.
In the dream.
Yeah. And the thing was that maybe notice him right off the bat. He had on one of them long wool coats, and it's 95 degrees out. Right. So as soon as he came in, I stood up and I walked over at him, and I just stood right in his face. And I just looked at him, and he looked at me, and I went, get out. Right. And he looked at me for a minute like he was going to do something. He turned around and he walked away. So I don't know if that's a guardian angel or something that had shown me that so many times so that I would know this guy when I saw him.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
It
makes me wonder, is there, have you, maybe this is one, have you had a relationship between your dreams and ghost hunting? Has there ever been a kind of a connection there?
Between dreams and ghost hunting? Not that I can say straight out. No. Okay. But I have had dreams that have helped with other things, so.
Dreams are extraordinarily powerful. I still have a dream that I can't figure out, other than, a psychological metaphor. But I used to have this reoccurring dream of being in this like running. It was almost desert-like Arizona, East Coast. West Coast, and nondescript. And there's lava coming. There's this this flow of magma coming down a hill, and I'm running. And I get into a building, and then I get to the roof of the building. The magma surrounds it, and there's no way out. It's one of the most terrifying dreams I've ever had. And then I never died in the dream, but I could never figure out what that dream was. And I would guess that for you, if you're ghost hunting and you are encountering these spirits from the other side, for better or worse, good or evil, that your intuition would feed you some information through your dream life to help you and assist you in your investigations, your paranormal investigations.
Well, I mean, that's a good premise, but I can't say that it's really happened to me. Okay. And the reason I say that is generally I have a very good vibe about picking things up that are around me when I'm ghost hunting. Most of the time. Yeah. I can usually walk into a room and say, that's the one down there. And one with Tony Rathman, who's on here right now, when we did the Phelps Dodge Hospital, they said there was one room that was really bad. Right. So I walked down there, and as I walked into the room, I felt something walk right through me. And I'd never had that happen before. And it felt nasty. The whole vibe about it was angry and nasty. And I came out, I hollered down to the people that were filming. I said, hey, something just walked through me, and it's really nasty. And I walked down, and they were messing with the camera, and they had the spirit box on. It's going clack, 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 clack. And then all of a sudden I turn around and I look, and Tony's got the video of it. I turn around and look, and I turn around and say, "Did you guys hear that?" Right? And they go, "No." And they were too close to the spirit box. Right? Well, I'm the only other one there, and nobody heard it. So, made me look kind of foolish because I'm hearing things nobody else is. Well, I was on Tony's show, and Tony says to me, he goes, "Oh, by the way, I checked all over there. You can't hear it on their film." I said, "Yeah, I know." And he says, "But my camera was rolling too. Watch this." And he shows me, and you can hear, I'm sitting there like this, and I hear, "Break!" Right? And I go like this, look down the way to the place I just said something was there. Right. Mm-hmm. And I said, "Wow, that's really cool." Well, I let other people listen to it, and every one of them said the same thing. What it was yelling was my name.
Rick, we have a question from UFOT. Did Rick encounter the quote Annie spirit at Mary King's Close? I'd love to visit there as well. Definitely grabbing his book. Thanks.
Well, Tia, there is a story about Mary King's Close inside the book. And yes, we did. We were there with Annie. I don't know if we ran into Annie or not. Right out there, we heard running going back and forth in the hallway and things like that. But right outside, I don't know if you've been there before, right outside is a hallway. And there was me and two girls standing there. And one of the guys from Scottish Paranormal was a little down the hallway. And I heard something, and you never say, "Are you hearing this?" You always let them tell you. So I'm looking at the two girls, and then all of a sudden they start going, so I know they're hearing it too. So I looked over and I said, "You guys are hearing something, right?" And they said, "Yeah." I said, "I am too." I said, "What are you hearing?" And they sat there and listened, and both of them looked at me and they said, "It sounds like a heartbeat." And it did. It was like boom, 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 boom. Now, when you get to Tia, when you get to the real Mary King's Close, go down there and you're going to find out you're probably 50 feet underground. You're not going to hear anything from up above. Oh, by the way, if I can, I am leading a tour to Scotland on July 11th to the 19th, and it's actually real Mary King's Close is one of the places we're going to go.
Okay, and I put Rick's website link in the chat so you guys can jump on there and check that out. I'm assuming it's on your website, Rick?
Yeah, it's also under ghostbelieveinme.com. And, that's in there. The book's in there, all kinds of neat stuff.
Very good. All right, so Aaron Tyson has a question for you. Rick, have you ever considered that some of these entities, ghosts or poltergeists, are alien or interdimensional beings? It's a newish theory that's being considered, not just my theory.
I've never thought of them as being alien, but I have thought that maybe they are interdimensional. Aliens seem to have their own way of doing things, and I don't see any real reason they would be trying to impersonate ghosts and poltergeists and things like that. But interdimensional beings, you could easily mistake for ghosts and things like that as they're coming through and things like that. So both are good ideas. I mean, it's a new theory, but it's something that I would look into a little farther.
Yeah, that begs the question then, if you entertain the idea that these are interdimensional, how does that affect your outlook on the afterlife and what you expect to be on the other side?
Well, I expect exactly what they say it's going to be.
Who's that? The ghost, or
no, the people that talk about heaven and hell and all that stuff. I'm pretty sure hopefully that's the way it's going to be. Mm-hmm. Don't know. Haven't died yet, as far as I know. But with the interdimensional thing,
this could be purgatory, Rick.
I might be in it right now, actually. But anyway, the interdimensional things. I think a lot of people are giving value to the interdimensional, and I think they're overlooking something very strong and possible. And this is especially with UFOs. I really think that UFOs are us from the future.
I think it's a fascinating theory. It's the paradox that gets under my skin. Not that it's impossible, not that I can't completely wrap my mind around it, but I'm I'm not a fan of that, because that also begs the question of, how far back in time have we gone, and how does that affect the timeline?
Well, let me ask you this. The gunfight at the OK Corral was in 1881,
mhm.
right? In 1969, we landed on the moon.
Okay.
That's 80 years, right? Roughly.
Mhm.
Okay. How much jump in technology do you think we will have 1,000 years from now?
Well, I can't even imagine, and I would assume that if there's a way through physics to time travel, by then we would certainly be able to crack that.
Well, the thing is, they have proven that time travel is possible. They've actually had time travel here, and it only went for just minuscule thing, right?
Yeah, I read that. It was the past year or so, wasn't it?
Well, they've had it for several years, but I mean, they're positive that they know that it'll work. The only problem is nobody has enough power to make it work, because it's
because these experiments were done with like subatomic particles, I think.
yeah, and but they have seen that there was a time difference from what it should have been, so they knew that it actually worked. And they always say if they can ever get a power source, that they can make it work. So 1,000 years from now, they can probably boom. And if you're actually into extrapolation, the gray aliens would look very much like us if they stopped exercising and the earth turned, a little less green.
I guess, but there seems to be kind of a homogenation of a humanoid, and I think some people would assume that we just kind of evolve into this various shades of brown and gray aliens, and I don't know if I buy into that, because much like our language, linguists I think at some point thought that as media grew, that our language would be more homogenized. Our accents, regional accents would kind of fade away. In fact, the opposite is not true. The opposite is true, that indeed we've kind of dug in deeper into our regional accents. And I think that as a species of diversity, I think there will always be a array, a verisimilitude, of different humans looking differently. And also, I would imagine that you would have humans that stay on Earth, humans that go off planet, live in space, humans that go to other planets, and then we'd separately kind of evolve in our own way, but still interbreed over time. I don't know. I'd like to think that it's more colorful and exciting in the future.
Let me give you a small example.
Sure.
Most of the people who say the gray aliens say they have 3 fingers, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they have long, skinny fingers.
Sure.
Well, just by the way we evolve, evolution, things that we don't use tend to shrink and fall away on us. Which is, if we're not actually having to carry things and stuff because we're so far advanced, our bodies will shrink. If the air and stuff is bad, our eyes will cover with a black shield. And just to prove you that evolution is happening right now, hold your hand up in front of your face. Look at your little finger.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually going away through evolution.
It's shrinking.
Yeah. It's going to eventually just go away. And then what are you going to have?
Well, I don't know. I mean,
that's what you're going to have after that one's gone.
Possibly, yeah. But even if it's been minimized over time, I mean, gosh, I can't imagine, not having my pinkies. I mean, it's not that you can't function without them, but they're certainly beneficial, aren't they? Are they not?
Of course they are. But that's just the way evolution works. And I mean, it's our pinkies used to be a lot bigger, a lot longer. And they're just because we don't use them that much,
Well, evolution is, a tug of war, outside pressure and, adaptation to that. And perhaps you're right. Maybe the body changes a little bit, and then that forces our behavior to change. That would be really interesting. I mean, it's like you hear these theories about raccoons being the next highly sentient being because of the way they use their hands. So perhaps the shape of our bodies changes first, and then the mind follows, rather than the opposite, or it's both.
Well, not only that, with all the computer stuff and artificial intelligence and everything else we have going now, 1,000 years from now, You can't even conceive of it. So the fact that maybe some things come back to visit us is not that hard to imagine, you know? And the fact that they seem to, and they're gone, right?
Mm-hmm.
They went back to their own time. Boom, gone.
Yeah, that's an interesting theory, and I'm open to it. I do hear these theories, stories from experiencers on this platform, and those experiences oftentimes come with an explanation that these are aliens from elsewhere. So it could both be true.
Yes, of course it could. We're not the only game in the universe. But I will tell you something. The United States Navy has built something, and if I can get the right pronunciation, it's called supercavitation, or it's supercavitation. But it's the way the submarines are able to move so fast through the water. And what it does is it actually moves the water before the vehicle gets to it. Now, if you ever look at some of these, matter of fact, the Tic Tac video and the other one that you had on earlier, if you look, there's always like a blurry ring around it, right? Which makes me wonder if they're using the same exact technology to move so fast through the atmosphere.
Yeah, or something akin. I mean, obviously, if you're moving through space and transversing through multiple mediums, that maybe they are doing something to the surrounding atmosphere. Warp drive, I don't know if works in atmosphere, but perhaps there's another technology beyond warp that we can't even theorize yet, because it just hasn't even reached our level of imagination. Rick, thank you so much for being on. I really appreciate it, and I'm glad we got to hear your take on alien life. That was most unexpected and happily welcomed. So, Rick, where do you want people to go to find out more about you?
You can go to ghostbelieveinme.com, or you can go to Rick McCallum, just like my name down here underneath up here underneath my picture on Facebook, and you'll see the things that I'm doing. I got a lot of ghost hunts coming up, and you feel free to watch, and some of them you're actually going to be able to come to. So keep an eye out. All
right. Thanks, Rick. Appreciate it. All right. We'll be back on the other side with Paul Eno. If you thought we were getting weird, just wait till we return on the other side of this break. This is Alan B. Smith for Paranormal Now on the Paranormal Pop YouTube channel. We will be right back. This coffee is delicious. Is that a UFO? I'm actually seeing a UFO. This coffee is awesome. That's why they call it alien coffee bean. Is this even made on Earth? Hey y'all. Paranormal Now will be syndicated on the UnX network, the new mainstream, where you can find your favorite hosts and shows on the cutting edge of ufological and paranormal news and topics. Listen for Paranormal Now rebroadcast on the X at 2 a.m. EST Fridays, 11 p.m. PST Thursdays at unxnetwork.com. Welcome back to Paranormal Now. This is Alan B. Smith, your grateful host. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. That was a great conversation with Rick McCallum. And now coming up in just a moment is Paul Eno. Paul, welcome to Paranormal Now. How are you?
Thank you, Ellen. Better than nothing. How are you?
Nothing. I'm with you on that one. Paul Eno is now celebrating over 50 years in paranormal research. Paul is one of the world's most experienced and controversial supernatural adventurers, one of the first ghost investigators of the early 1970s. Beginning while he was studying for the priesthood, his theories and methods are now shaking the paranormal world to its core. When he began running into UFOs during ghost cases in the late 1970s, he began to develop the idea of the flap area, later discovering that paranormal legends Dr. Jacques Vallée and John Keel had already suggested the idea. You can find out more about Paul at behindtheparanormal.com. And Paul, tell us a little bit more about what you're doing now in broadcasting and investigating.
Oh, well, when they threw me out of the seminary in 1977 for investigating the paranormal, I didn't know what else to do. The only other thing I could do was write, so I ended up in journalism. And I've had a really great career in New England newspapers and magazines, and now I'm mainly writing about three things: the housing issues, the paranormal, and history. So I say that if you're a harried, overregulated contractor working on a haunted house in New England, I'm your guy. So, but that's my son joined me in 2005. He's now 30 and married, and this sort of thing. And people heard him grow up on the air. We've had our show on the air since 2008, including 4.5 years on CBS Radio, and now we've been based for many years now at WOON AM and FM in Rhode Island, which serves the Boston and Providence market. And my son has always been on the air with me. He has a degree in audio engineering, so that's helpful. And our specialty is, as you said, flap areas, a term we kind of invented. Matter of fact, it's one of a number of terms we've had to invent just to talk about the concepts that have been manifesting themselves to me since the early 70s, because the old ideas just weren't good enough. So that's our specialty. We're working on 6, including Rendlesham Forest in England, the Pennsylvania Triangle, Litchfield Triangle in Connecticut. And we work on cases for years at a time. We've been working on the Litchfield Triangle in Connecticut since 2005, and it's still getting bigger. So we have our hands full.
So you are steeped in weird.
You might say that, yeah.
Okay. And how does that affect your social life, your livelihood? Do you share this with other people? I mean,
well, that night, the fact that I eat a lot of garlic to stay healthy, I don't have a lot of friends. And
that's one way to deter the conversation, right?
Yeah, but I never get sick either. So as far and no vampire problems whatsoever.
Right.
So, but no, in the sense of I've done this for so long that everybody just accepts it. It's funny. I edit a magazine for home builders in Rhode Island here, because Rhode Island is 37 miles wide and 48 miles long. So I mean, everybody knows everybody else. It's more like a big town.
Yeah.
So everybody knows this. I mean, the state comes to me and asks for stories for the state website, the folklore and that sort of thing. So everybody knows that I have no problem with my social life. As a matter of fact, the mayor of our town asked me to run for the council. And I said, you realize I'm the local ghost guy. And she said, oh, the council's so weird now, nobody would think anything of it. And that's a quote. So I did, because I would have had to give up my radio show. There's a station policy, but so it doesn't affect my social life such as it is. So it's been so much a part of me for so long, and a part of my work that it's just accepted.
Well, how did you sink your teeth in all this in the first place? For so many of us, it's an experience we had when we were younger. What about you?
Yeah, that's true. But the usual bio is I grew up in a haunted house. Okay, well, I did not grow up in a haunted house.
Mm.
What happened to me, and as you can imagine, this was always very difficult to talk about, was at the age of 7 in 1961, I witnessed my father's suicide. And it was a mixed marriage. My father was a garden variety Protestant, my mother a strict Roman Catholic, even though she was of Yankee New England descent. I was in a very strict Catholic school where if you ate a hot dog on Friday or committed suicide, you went straight to hell.
Hmm.
And my father was a wonderful man, and I said to my teacher, Sister Mary Joel, Sisters of Mercy, if you believe the name, and she said, essentially, I said, what happened to my father? I mean, what's going on here? She said, essentially, God is bigger than all that. And that got me through. But all along, I wondered, where is my father? My brother was studying for the priesthood. He was ordained 2 years later. At the age of 14, when you could still do that, I entered the seminary, 1967. And nobody talked about any of this. Because obviously at that level, you're dealing with the usual high school and junior college subjects. But when theology was taught and philosophy, which they started this on early, there was really no mention of an afterlife. I mean, everybody just sort of accepted that there was one, but there was no real definition of it. So finally, in 1970, I encountered an article in the Hartford Courant about this old man who had an old camera. And since the 1940s, he'd been running around an abandoned village in Northeast Connecticut and taking pictures and getting all this weird stuff on him, streaks and balls of light and things of this kind. And obviously, this is long before digital media, so you had film you could look at and this sort of thing. So I got in touch with him, and I said, and I had this idea, maybe the ghosts we know about so well in every culture throughout history are souls in purgatory, good old Catholic doctrine of purgatory. And that's actually how I started. And my first field case was I researched it to death, and I brought some of the other seminary students with me, much to the chagrin of the seminary authorities. And I was kind of one step ahead of them until they finally caught up with me, a bunch of years later. And we had things happen that convinced me these people aren't dead at all, never mind in some kind of purgatory. We ran into a village where you would hear the sounds of daily life as if it was a normal day for other people. And this really threw us for a loop. And I said, these ideas about dead people, I think all this isn't good enough. The physical things that would happen, the very sounds. And of course, so I really, right after that case, 1972, I started to really reevaluate, but I didn't know where else to go. The assumptions and the beliefs that really came to us out of the 19th century spiritualism were what governed this field, such as it was. And there weren't a lot of people doing this. It's not like today. I mean, today you sit on a street corner, you throw pebbles, you're going to get 10 people who are ghost hunters, quote unquote.
Oh yeah, I mean the Ghostbusters movie helped really change that. I think
well, so did the Exorcist movie in a sense.
Oh, true. Yeah.
And in 73, because I got hit with the Bridgeport poltergeist the following year, and everybody expected me or the priest to come flying out the window like the guy did in The Exorcist, And but nevertheless, it really, I was shaken up. But where else do you go with demons and ghosts? And that was the main thing. But it struck me, if these people are dead, they'd be dead. They wouldn't be doing or saying anything, Hence the idea, and I started running into in the late 70s when I began encountering cases where people were seeing ghosts of themselves or the ghosts of buildings, if you will, that were there one day and not there the next. Or ghosts of people who hadn't died yet. I said, there has got to be some deeper explanation to this. And that's when I stumbled on quantum entanglement and quantum mechanics as a possible explanation for paranormal things. And of course, we're getting into what Rick, whom I do not have the pleasure of knowing, was talking about interdimensional, which is really not accurate. It's really interworld, because within different worlds, there would be different dimensions. But nevertheless, I think that was more accurate than the dead people theory, at least to me.
When you say world, interworld, what is that?
Okay, well, there are two extremely difficult concepts that we embrace, and we've had eminent scientists on our show, such as Fred Allen Wolf, Amit Goswami, essentially agreeing with us about the physics of what's going on here. There are many different interpretations, but when I say interworld, the two most difficult concepts are that all possible outcomes exist somewhere or somewhen in the multiverse, and a concept that comes from Einstein's definition of his special theory of relativity, 1952, essentially saying that all past and future is simultaneous. It's all happening at once. And the time as we experience it is simply a function of our consciousness. If I may, if I read you a quote that Einstein wrote to his the widow of his very close friend Michelangelo Besso from Switzerland, when we don't even use the word death. We use the word translate. It's an ancient theological term. I think it's much more accurate. And the fellow translated 1955. And so Einstein wrote, quote, "Now Besso has departed from this strange world a little ahead of me. That means nothing. People like us who believe in physics know that the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion," unquote. That means everything, and I didn't encounter that until a few years after what I'm talking about. But now, as far as the cases that I was dealing with, I was meeting people who weren't dead. I think when you expand your consciousness on all this, I think that it's very clear you're dealing with human beings or non-human beings of all kinds, all sorts of different languages and forms, as in all possible outcomes, the evolution and things like this, and all possible worlds actually existing somewhere or somewhen. Because the cases I was running into were things I never even read about in the paranormal literature. And I think that was a matter of the narrow interpretation. I think people run into these things all the time, but they interpret them in a very narrow paradigm, and they don't see, I think, the full depth of what's really happening. And I know we could be all wrong. Maybe Rick McCallum and the people who believe in the sort of more, I suppose, down-to-earth interpretation are correct, but that has never worked for me, or not for my son and me. And I think we're dealing with multiple beings and multiple parallel worlds, which are exchanging energy and perhaps inhabitants all the time. And I've run into some doozies, as we used to say.
But what does that tell you, that if you consider ghost hunting theory or down to earth, what does that say about yourself, about your theories? Is it too far out? Is it too far?
Well,
is it too far out there? Or
yeah, it tells you, first of all, there is no real world. I mean, there are all kinds of worlds. One of the things that really chills me is I'm often talking with mediums and people of this kind, and even the ghost hunters, quote unquote, whatever that means, saying that okay, well, you talk to them and they see the light. Okay, go to the light. Well, I would say, don't go to the light. I'll tell you why. Because the light, in our experience, are the plasma charged brains, BRANES, or membranes, as a physicist would say, of parallel realities. You could be sending them to a hell world if they could even get through it.
But I mean, but that's speculation too. We don't really know.
Oh, sure, right? It is. Yeah. I mean, that's what we believe we see, but we could be wrong.
But what if the light feels good? I mean, would a parallel horror world feel good if that's the light you were receiving?
That's a good question. But if this is what's happening, if you're there being told by some voice from somewhere or somewhen that seems to be authoritative, you wouldn't always pay attention to your feelings, would you? And again, what is it you're talking to? I mean, talk about electronic voice phenomena. We have been told a number of times, and we don't really use. I think there's some pareidolia involved. Some are rather clear, but I have a number of questions about things like EVPs. Why are the statements, or they tend at least to be in modern English in some cases? Why is you go to Gettysburg and you get so-called EVPs that you come back and they're sounding like 20th century people, or 21st century? That makes me suspicious. Now, that's not always the case. There are some very clear and period statements sometimes that come through. I've had people.
If you're in a castle in Scotland, I mean, you're not hearing an American EVP in most cases, right?
Well, no, not always. No, but the thing is that when I'll give you an example. The first case that I mentioned, that this is in Pomfret, Connecticut, that abandoned village we had investigated in 1970 through 1972. The issue with the EVPs, and we actually, well, because when we were there, the high tech was a cassette tape recorder and a Instamatic Kodak camera. Okay, we didn't have any of this electronic stuff. We heard with our own ears, there were 6 of us, the laughter of children down by a brook, and this is all overgrown with woods now, moving at a very rapid rate. And it was my first introduction to the bizarre spatial relationships that can occur in paranormal experiences. For example, somebody might be up by I once talked a guy out of suicide, I believe, at a hotel in Florida, who was not in our world. He was up by the ceiling somewhere. That's an odd characteristic of some of these experiences. But in that case with the children laughing, we actually were trying to record it, but we couldn't. It wouldn't record. So perhaps an EVP in reverse. So what were we actually hearing? And one thing I didn't dare say to my seminary classmates or really anywhere, I didn't write about it for 30 years, was that I knew who some of these children were. I knew their names. And I later found out that I'm closely related to the people who had lived there. We were like second cousins, a few times removed because of this is 1700s through the 1890s, this period when this place was functional. So whether that had a lot to do with it, I didn't know at the time. But the idea is that I think we're dealing with real people, physical and all, in real parallel worlds that are perhaps within our world family, another term of ours, because the laws of physics are very similar from world to world. Okay. In other worlds, the physicists will tell you this, these laws of physics may be quite different. And I've run into that, I believe. So I think that if we're dealing with dead people, I mean, I don't think that has any meaning in a world where there are many facets, another term we use, of ourselves in our super life, as we call it. The lives we are living in many, many forms and many parallel realities here and there. One of the illustrations of that was a rather simple one. I was speaking at Mount Ida College up near Boston many years ago. And I was amused because half the student body was studying to be undertakers. I thought that was cute given the circumstances. But when I was speaking to them, I was talking about human relationships in the multiverse. And they put me in a big armchair at the end like Santa Claus, and the students would come up and tell me their own experiences. Well, 2 freshman girls came up. And they said, why is it that we'd never seen each other before in our whole lives? On registration day, we saw each other across the crowded room, and we've been sisters ever since. Inseparable, and this sort of thing, just right out of nowhere. I said, well, if these theories are correct, at some point in the multiverse, somewhere or somewhen, you are each other. And they knew exactly what I was talking about, and they went scurrying off, all happy that they had some sort of explanation, which which I believe could well be correct.
We have an interesting comment by Taylor States. He says shadow people. Is that what we're seeing? Could that be?
Well, first we want to give credit to Heidi Hollis, who has made that term a registered trademark. Okay, Heidi, great person. and just
Yeah,
lost his
Heidi
dad.
is a friend. We've talked about that many times.
Yeah, oh,
Um,
exactly. Yeah,
yeah,
and
she
I don't know. It's a great term.
introduced that term. Mhm.
I have found that that there are, in at least in a number of our cases, there have been, and negative ones, there have been very small creatures you might call shadow people that turned out to be what we call parasites.
Mm.
Now, my real baptism of fire with that was that Bridgeport case with Ed and Lorraine Warren in 1974. And we assumed these were demons. And the assumptions get you every time. These were demons. We had Father Bill Charbonneau, the priest. I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with the case because it's been on TV a lot lately. And one of the things that really was a problem for me was that, I always questioned I was a real pain in the neck student in the seminary. I questioned everything, and when we came into that house in Bridgeport, I had a certainty there were 4 entities involved in this. And because I didn't know anything else at the time except demons, so it had to be demons. But when I had encounter with them, and in one case, a physical encounter with them, it was actually hurt in the leg by a flying television set, things of that kind. I felt these were the best word I could find were aliens. And from your conversation with Rick, I know this came up, but I think alien in the very broad sense of the term. I don't necessarily mean from other planets or anything else. And again, if these multiverse ideas are correct, what meaning would that even have? So these were sterile in many ways. They were hungry, hostile, and couldn't care less about us. And at one point, I put the little girl Marcy behind me. The thing came up in front of me, and you could almost see this gauzy structure. The Warrens weren't there. They'd gone off to do some TV show. And this is where I learned you don't get angry or fearful or annoyed in the face of these things because they feed on it. Yeah. And that's where I started to get the idea about parasites. And it's not new. Energy parasites are not a new idea, but I don't think a lot of people understand them. This thing got stronger, got around me, threw the girl across the room. But after I had pushed against it and then pushed back, I mean, they're supposed to be spirits. That was the assumption, and by definition, a demon was a spirit. This thing was no spirit. It had a physical body, but I couldn't see it entirely. And this really, well, Alan, probably the worst times in the paranormal life are not necessarily the scary phenomena that occur. It's the phenomena that occur that smash your belief system. Because all we have is our belief system. And this is what happened to me at that point. It was terrifying. And so then the thing took advantage of that and got around. And then it was feeding on these people. And we were sitting around for 3 days waiting for the Bishop of Bridgeport to give permission for an exorcism, which never came. And the whole thing descended into confusion after the Tuesday of that 3-day period. And that's another story. But all these things just led me into some belief that there had to be some new ideas presented. The old ideas weren't good enough.
Oh, and we're always looking for new ideas. I think you're right. The belief systems do get, destroyed, as it were. And, then you kind of have to, regroup and approach life with a different perspective. For me, that's always thrilling. It's not scary. At least I can't recall a time ever being scared because of my worldview having been shifted. In fact, it's always felt kind of liberating if a new idea, comes to fruition or presented. But I think there's actually a danger in that because, and I talk about this a lot because I do feel that oftentimes we consider ourselves open-minded people in this field, but then we kind of get stuck into a new, niche mentality of a worldview. And then anything that comes to challenge that, we resist, and therefore are not the open-minded people we thought we were. So it sounds to me like you're always pushing through. Is that a fair assessment?
Well, I try to be. Remember at the time I was 21 years old, and I'd been inculcated in seminary doctrine and things of this kind, and so that smashed my belief system. But now, I mean, over the years, I've become, I think, liberated from a lot of the preconceptions I like to think, and pursue new ideas. I'm very excited. I'm excited to get up every morning.
Mhm.
And I think one thing we have to be very careful about is confirmation bias, as it's called, taking what we experience and sort of making it fit our own points of view. But I think it's questioning everything really might not lead you to any solid answers, but
Mhm.
it's exciting, and it pushes the envelope, as they say. And you're not
Well,
going to get any answers if you don't push the envelope.
right, and I asked you to come onto this show after I saw a post that you posted on Facebook, and I just appreciate your pontifications, and I think that that is essential rather than proclaiming that Paul, know for a fact, because all of this really is a form of philosophy. It's metaphysical inquiries.
Yeah.
And for me, what's exciting is that each and every one of us have, like, I think, like a little slightly different perspective or experience. And that's why I can continue to have these conversations with so many different people, because it's always novel to some degree. Man, I wish I would have found you earlier and asked you to be a part of a documentary that I'm doing right now. And it's very simple documentary, but it's really about people like you who are into these fields of paranormal. And so I might as well ask you, since I can't ask you for the documentary, and I think you were kind of going there. Does the paranormal and the pursuit of it, does it give you any meaning, especially, given your background in your theological studies? Does it give you a purpose or a meaning at all?
Oh, absolutely. People are always, particularly on big national shows where people call in. They hear you have a seminary background, and they always blame you for not embracing their religious beliefs, right? And what's funny is, you have a conversation with somebody, say a Roman Catholic, for example, and there's one who studied both at Roman Catholic and Eastern Orthodox seminaries. You have a
Mhm.
conversation. I say, well, this is wrong with you, and that, and I'll see heresy after heresy after heresy, and what they're talking about, and if that kind of thing bothers you. And so it's added, I think, to my understanding. It's added to the. I mean, I look back or after a long life and see how valuable the seminary education was. I do have a degree in philosophy, and that's been valuable to help you think. I like to think, and but to be open minded and to be able to see, okay, well, what does this really mean? For example, people will come after me about the whole multiverse idea and say, well, how does that square with your theological education? I said, well, I think it's really there in all the ancient beliefs, in all the preachings of the mystics, and all the if you want to talk about the Bible, the very first verse of the letter to the Ephesians by St. Paul, and through him, Christ, God created the worlds, plural. And I looked, and one of the great things about studying Greek and Hebrew is you can read it in, as far as we know what the original is, and we really don't even know what the original words were. But it says the word cosmos, which is actually the worlds or the universes, plural. So I'm not all that impressed by St. Paul, but he knew seems like he knew something here, or somebody did. So
Yeah,
these
Paul,
things
Paul
are
certainly
not
comes
new.
with his flaws.
I'm sorry.
Said Paul certainly comes with his flaws.
Indeed, yeah. Don't get me going. I know I'm named after him, but that's about where
Right.
it ends. But in any case, I think that the whole idea of creation and an afterlife. Okay, creation. Theologically, officially, God's love could not be contained. It was infinite and exploded
Mhm.
into the creation. That's essentially what is taught. So, if His love was infinite, why wouldn't the creation be infinite? And how is it infinite without being all possible outcomes?
Mhm.
Forming perhaps not an imperfect world, but considering the whole thing, maybe a great, elegant wholeness, you know. But that's one point of view. I happen to think that that has merit. But then I don't know if you're going to get into the afterlife or what, but I think that to answer your question, I've answered it with a rather long monologue, but it's really enhanced what I've been taught, and it's taken me way beyond it, I think, into realms of questioning that I think maybe can bring a lot of meaning.
All right, we're going to open up the Skype call-in line if you have a question for Paul. This is an experimental line. I'm not sure if this is going to work, but the link to that Skype line is in the comment section on Facebook and on YouTube. If you want to give that a go and ask Paul your question. Paul, we do have a comment a little bit earlier, a question rather, from Mikey Thomas. We were discussing the light passing over. And he asks, could the light be an effect from DMT, dimethyltryptamine, in the brain?
Yeah, the use of drugs in the history of the paranormal, the history of human spirituality, is a very interesting one. I have seen or heard of cases where people have experienced this light and not been near any sort of artificial stimulant at all. So I suppose it could be, if you use DMT. That is very common among some of the shamans in Central and South America. And I know Graham Hancock, the famous name, has used it. Told us that he had used it at one point. But I think that it may or may not be true. But I don't think you need DMT to have a light experience. We have a lot of photographs of things we believe are the light. We have a photograph, and it's in our book, the Behind the Paranormal, Everything You Know Is Wrong. My son and I wrote together, and it's illustrating flap areas, and you seem to have a photograph of two versions of the same room on one another, and then there is some listener to our show from Colorado wrote in. All the experts have been looking at this film, this picture for years. Said, how come you didn't mention the alien? And there seems to be the head of a classic gray, if you will, sort of sticking out almost in the window next to the refrigerator and in the shot. And Mark Antonio from MUFON, who's a dear friend of ours, but also the biggest killjoy in the world when it comes to video and still photography. And I have to admit that is not on the refrigerator. It's a three-dimensional object in front of it. So again, possible indications of the light being not a ghost or things of this kind, but a well-defined world boundary between, in this case, two versions of the same room. So, but that's how it works for us. I mean, we're always open-minded, looking for new ideas. I am a little sick of the old ideas, I must say.
I can understand, if you're talking about the same thing over and over and over again ad nauseum. But for me, I'm never bored of it. Because I think everybody is always trying to look at this thing from a different angle. Mikey responds to Johan in the comments question. Johan asked, did you mean natural DMT in the brain?
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Yes, there is.
Yeah, Mikey says DMT being produced by our pituitary gland and being a potential defense mechanism our brain releases for protection, especially during active death. Okay.
Thank you, Mike. I'm sorry for misunderstanding there. One of the things with a near-death experience is everybody says, well, you've got chemicals are being released, the brain, there's fire, the neurons are firing at random and all this sort of thing. And what strikes me is that this, as in everything else in our bodies, is a product of evolution. And why do things evolve? They evolve because they have survival value. So what would be the survival value of this? I mean, your body's dying, for crying out loud. So this in a convoluted way could be some indication that there's something beyond, for our consciousness. I myself, in a military situation, was buried in an avalanche. This is in the Yukon Territory of Canada in 1979. I can't talk about the circumstances, but I knew I was going to die. I mean, the weight alone of this was terrible. But the funny thing was, my body was panicking, but my mind was not. I was perfectly calm. Something reached down. I felt a warmth in my right hand, and of course, for 79, I mean, we didn't have the technology for clothing, etc. we had today. However, something pulled me out of there. I was under 8 feet of snow, and my comrades were jumping up and down trying to dig, and out I came. And you get it angels or whatever you want, but something saved my life.
And out you came. What does that mean?
Well, no, so I something pulled me right up out of there. Out came my right hand first, and there I was. And but the point being, in this case, that my mind was totally calm during the whole thing. And it kind of gets back to what Rick said.
Right, exactly, and that's what I was thinking. I think it kind of makes sense. It's kind of hard to parse.
Yeah, it is. I mean,
but when a chicken gets its head cut off, it doesn't look like it's going peacefully.
No.
Right.
Well,
so
I can't imagine if you or I got our heads cut off, we'd go peacefully either. But
right, and hunters, anyone who kills an animal knows they're suffering seemingly until the last moment.
Yeah,
and that's why you have compassion kills, right? To take them out of their suffering. And so I guess that would be a counter to the DMT serving as a peaceful or calming effect on the body. During
well, I'm talking about happened to me. I mean, I think the whole experience is very personal.
Yeah.
And I've stood at the deathbeds of 4 atheists, okay, in the context of seminary training, pastoral training. We would visit hospitals, excuse me, and it's a long story how I got to be with these atheists. One of them was an MD, but all 4 of them, this is at different times, all 4 of them were terrified, absolutely terrified. And I had read the writings of some of them, and that they were very sure in their disbelief. And each one of them took my hand and asked me about God. And I said, look, just say thank you. That's all you need to do, and you'll never have to worry about it. And that seemed to comfort them. But they weren't good deaths as death goes. There was a lot of terror there, and they seemed more peaceful after that, because they realized they really didn't have a choice but to accept what I said. And
are you talking about gratitude?
Gratitude is everything. Gratitude. People ask me what Hollywood film. I don't have a lot of time to watch TV or movies. What Hollywood films really say it? Philosophically, theologically. I said, you'll be surprised. One is the Muppet Christmas Carol, of all things. It's amazing that the stuff that comes out of it. And I don't even think the writers are aware of it. At the very end, Michael Kane, of all people, is going around singing, wake up with a grateful prayer and a thankful heart. That's it. That says it. Yeah. All you have to do in life is be thankful. Be thankful for your family. Fulfill your responsibilities every day. And that's how whatever death may be, if it even exists, that's how I want to be found.
Loving how do you my find family. Gratitude? Oh, go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. That's all right.
Well, I was going to say, how do you find gratitude when you are suffering? If life consequences, bad choices, whatever it might be, because that's something that I struggled with for a long time, and I keyed in with you as soon as you said that, because for me, it's almost life-saving. Gratitude.
Yeah. I'll give you the example of Father Gregory Petrov, an Orthodox priest, and he was in a Soviet prison camp in the Gulag under Stalin. Obviously, not a pleasant experience. In 1940, and he wrote it became a church service that's used on Thanksgiving. I never miss it on Thanksgiving Day in America. And the most beautiful gratitude for everything, nature, his own life, whatever food he had, which was practically nothing. but he overcame all bitterness, all narcissism in every form. And he wrote this incredible prayer of gratitude from the worst possible circumstances. That to me is what spirituality is all about. He overcame everything through simple gratitude. It really is all very simple, I think, Alan. Rick, wait a minute. I'm talking to your guest there, but
That's
Alan,
right.
anyway, but excuse me.
I know
But
who you're
I think
talking.
that gratitude is everything. It
Yeah.
really is, and then its power is amazing.
Okay,
You have to
but
have gratitude and respect before you can have love.
but you as a I would say a thoughtful person, right? Intelligent person, and seemingly
Maybe.
compassionate. What I can tell, how do you express that to someone who's suffering so much and is saying, well, screw you, my life is terrible, or they're in deep depression. I mean, how do you unlock that? Because for me, it's almost a mystery when you're really, really lost. And I
Yes.
can't explain how I got there exactly. I saw the progress, but I can't. It's so difficult for me to express to someone like, this is how you get there. It's almost impossible. What about you?
Well, you've reached to the heart of the dilemma of pastoral theology. Okay. You have to take everyone as they come. You have to empty yourself in order to hear them. And I think one thing you shouldn't do is, start telling about your own, personal problems. I mean, you listen. Half the time, I think, or more than half the time, people just want someone to listen. I've talked to people who are on the verge of suicide in the hospitals with the dying. That's, they realize they really don't have any other way to go in the sense of any other choice, but to listen and try to get, what you have to say through their heads. But as you say, when you're dealing with people and there is so much suffering, I don't have to tell anybody this, we all see it. Negativity, all sorts of, dinner bells ringing for parasites, as we would put it in a paranormal sense. How do you even deal with that? And I still say it has to start with us. We can't all be Mother Teresa or, we start, or Mother Teresa said, you want to change the world, go home and love your family. It starts right in the home, right with us. And the advice we give them, we're working with a number of people now who are having parasite problems, in our opinion, negative paranormal things going on. And so, look, we used to go in, as in the Bridgeport case, with holy water, priest, and all, but sometimes that would work, sometimes it wouldn't work. People have to fix it themselves. They come together. They use what my son Ben and I call the Peter Pan theory. Think happy thoughts. It's really very simple. Cut off the food supply. Bring in humor. I once got rid of the worst poltergeist I ever dealt with in my life by using a joke book. That's not. It was not the usual remedy I would suggest, but in this particular case, it did. So it's a matter of bringing in positive energies and support, just listening sometimes.
Yeah. So I understand. I think in modern psychology, this idea of like, just be positive can actually be really detrimental, because you don't really know what you're doing. You're just trying to force positivity. And I think that in a sense, you're kind of denying what someone else is feeling sometimes. Like, stop feeling what you're feeling and just be positive. That's really not a solution.
That's unrealistic.
That's unrealistic.
Transpersonal psychology gets beyond that. But I don't know, one of the problems with even the social sciences like that is they don't talk to each other. I mean, they should talk to the physicists who are researching consciousness.
Yeah.
And this is where you get into a lot of the stuff that I think we're dealing with in the paranormal. And matter of fact, we have a behavioral scientist in our gang. She's one of the producers of our show, but that's part-time. She's a behavioral scientist. And we're actually going to look at the behavior of parasites, which aren't even human in our opinion, and just look at their motivations, what stimulates them, how they can be dealt with. I think it's worth a try. Again, pushing the envelope, applying police techniques to UFO research, or applying behavioral science to parasites.
How can you study parasites if they come and go, or how do you lock onto a parasite and study it?
Well, they don't always come and go. Sometimes they're attached to families for generations.
Hmm.
There are about 9 different species that we believe we've identified.
Oh, really?
There are and they sort of go from the lower level two-dimensional thinkers who are almost tricksters up to
Mm.
the wise, as we call them, and not wise in any way that helps us. Wise in the ways of their own species that tend to operate. Some of them operate in teams. They seem to have leadership, even a culture. Uh, we've seen them operating in different worlds at the same time, feeding on one event in one world, and then when they can't get enough to eat, coming in. The whole case of the haunted policeman of Vermont, as we call it, was based on that. The thing would
Yeah.
come into as a part. It's I don't know. We don't have time to discuss that now, but these are
Well,
all
how
cases
do you
where we believe we've seen.
Right. Well, how do you feel about energies? Like, I mean, music, right? It's a form of energy. Sometimes I need to lean into sunny day real estate and kind of get into my, melancholic, darker side. And other times, we will listen to the Bee Gees as pop and as, simplistic as it may be. It's like, I really need to just feel something positive. Is that with the same thing with these entities that you encounter? Um, are there repeat entities that you can go back, or spaces you can go back into and know that you're going to have a positive experience here, or you're going to have a negative experience here?
Well, you have to control the experience. Now, I'm not sure what the parasite's musical taste might be, but what you do
Can you build that into your study, Paul?
yeah, we're going to work on that. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
But as far as it depends what affects us. For example, when we would go in with holy water and all this stuff, these things, you could say that maybe they have some power in themselves, but I've
Mhm.
seen teddy bears work for little kids to motivate their own power to take control of their own lives. Because I think in the end, we have a lot more power than any parasite would. Again, if that theory is correct, because I've seen it happen. They want you to think that they're in charge, but they're not during possession cases. Probably the worst one I ever worked on was I was assisting a priest, 1973, and I just got the impression we were feeding this thing, and it was the Catholic ritual. It was very commanding and all this sort of thing, and it was feeding on us. That was really the impression I got, and the girl ended up with dying 3 years later of a drug overdose. She was 17 at the time of the exorcism, but it was just, I just got the idea that this just wasn't right. We weren't doing the right thing. And I think the right thing is the simple thing, which is bring in positive energy. Come together with your family. Tell them that you love them now. Don't wait. And all these, this is, so even if we're full of baloney, I mean, this is good advice for any family. And we've seen wonderful results without resorting to exorcism.
I guess what I'm also asking is, we always talk about how these spirits affect us, or feed off of us, or that sort of thing. Can we go into a space? Can you go into a space and feed off of them in a sense, that or shared energy, positive or negative?
Well, that's a very astute question, actually, because we talk about another term, the identity point.
Mhm.
In working with people who have been obsessed and possessed, or whatever term you want to use, I think there was a point at which, and this is where it gets into real kind of deep spirituality here, like those two girls at Maronite College who kind of were each other at some point in the multiverse. I think that identity is indiscriminate. It extends to the parasites. At some point in the multiverse, you share an identity with that parasite. It discovers that, and I've never seen it totally control a human being. What I have seen is a bonding that takes place in a very negative way. But during exorcisms, I would see what the ritual calls the sick person smile and seem almost to enjoy the attention. I saw that in the Bridgeport case with the little girl Marcy, and the whole background of, anything about the case, of the kid was totally repressed, 10 years old, kept home from school, no friends, and the whole thing kind of exploded into a big dinner bell for these 4 parasites. And it just she enjoyed the police being around. She enjoyed the reporters and all the attention she was getting. We don't just sit there like lumps and these things happen to us. I think we cooperate in the paranormal experience, whether it be a negative one like that, or whether it be just seeing Uncle Chuck skipping down Main Street 2 weeks after his funeral, that sort of thing.
Or earlier, I think you mentioned something about narcissism. Can a narcissist, someone who is so more self-involved and can care less about others, are they more susceptible to a possession or an attachment?
Yeah, I think yes. And we live in an age of what I call militant narcissism. People are narcissistic and they celebrate it, and they use it as a weapon. And I think that is, again, a lot of parasitical stuff going on. It rings the dinner bell. And so, yeah, I think I have to answer yes to that question.
Yeah, I've always kind of felt I have no fear of attachment or possession. It's never been a worry of mine. Is that a naive thing? Because I feel like I'm okay. I'd be okay.
Well, I don't think you would get there because of the strength of your character. I don't know you really, but I mean, I can tell that from what you say that you're sincere in your strength, and that's good. But it's not a narcissistic strength. I don't think, just from my first impressions. So yeah, I think people should not concentrate on this. If these things are in their early stages, as I said, try to ignore it and bring in the positive energy. I think that you can control these situations very easily, and no, not necessarily easily, but you can control them, and with, again, positive energy, whatever that may mean. I always tell my 2 sons, laugh, but not at each other. Keep it positive, that sort of thing.
Right.
And but again, love, and I'm not a really touchy-feely guy, my generation, but love is really where the strength is. Love and humility, simplicity, and respect. All things good, holy, right, and true will protect you.
I think the tough thing is, I think everybody wants to be happy, right? And I think that, when you're pursuing the paranormal, these entities, aliens, whatever it is, that there's a draw there that I think makes, or at least gives people pleasure. What are they really looking for when you're out hunting for Bigfoot or, chasing UFOs?
Yeah. Well, because being happy is a term that has dynamite attached to it in a way. What do you mean by happy? I mean, giving in to all your passions and all this.
Or letting go of all your passions. Like, yeah.
I mean, the Buddha would have had plenty to say about that, Jesus too. So I think when you're out looking for Bigfoot or UFOs, I think in a way you're maybe looking for yourself. You're looking to push the envelope of your understanding. I think that perhaps you want more than is given to you in daily life. When I see, when I worked in psychiatric hospitals as a student, dealing with people who were judged to be schizophrenic, they had been diagnosed. Very often, they would have the most knowing looks in their eyes. And I was in conversations with some of them, and some of my experiences with some of them. It was a matter of, I think they were really living in close parallel worlds that were real. And I've addressed groups of psychiatrists on this. And in public, the steam comes out of the ears and the eyes turn red. But then at the end, a couple of them will always come up and say, I've often suspected the same thing, but if I said it, I'd lose my job. Oh. And today, if you're having multiverse awareness, sometimes they'll fill your pockets full of antipsychotic drugs, and off you go. Whereas
it seems to me, oh, good.
No, just maybe the inmates should be running the asylum in some cases.
Well, I mean, one flew over the cuckoo's nest. I mean, there are still plenty of instances where people are not treated as they should. Right. I guess, if that's true, then the only way for psychologists or science to pursue that avenue would be, first you have to have some kind of measurable evidence that there are in fact other entities living side by side that we can't see. And then if that's true and we can show that, then I'm sure psychologists would get the green light, like, oh, maybe there's more to this, or or maybe one schizophrenic is not the same as another in that regard.
Yeah. Well, I think there is an awareness of this that is growing. I have I'm friendly with several psychotherapists. I'm thinking particularly of Dr. Paul Leslie in South Carolina, who actually is very much aware of this and uses it in his treatment of people. Very often, because they have to be careful, they may be ostracized by their colleagues, but they are licensed counselors and holders of doctorates in these fields. I'm involved in the Consciousness and Contact Research Institute, which includes a lot of PhDs who've been ostracized for pushing the envelope and going beyond and doing this. Now, psychology is a social science. It's not exact. So in a way, it might be easier to approach the paranormal. I've been told by a number of psychiatric social workers that I'm more skeptical than they are. And I think you need to keep your healthy skepticism. So I think the field is growing and it is expanding, and these things are happening.
If you want to find out more about Paul Eno, you can go to behindtheparanormal.com. Paul, what do you think happens when you die? Where are you going, Paul?
Maybe nothing happens. I'd like to go to Disney World, but actually, I think this is another tough concept we didn't get to. But I think we're living all sorts of parallel lives already. I think it's all part of our subconscious. And I think we go wherever the path of least resistance is. We go to where we already are. If you're a selfish jerk in this life, you're just going to be aware of being a selfish jerk in many other places and times. And I think we use the analogy of the tree. A tree has a gazillion leaves on it, and one falls off. So what? You're the whole tree. You're not just one leaf. And we all are together, really, in that. It's a matter of discovering that it's not about you, it's about us, and that there really is no. And Amit Goswami says this: there really is no individual. We are all together in ways that are concrete and that we can't even imagine, and that is the path of discovery.
Yes, Paul, thank you so much.
Great pleasure, Alan.
Okay, have a good night, Paul. And thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight on Paranormal Now, live streaming on the youtube.com/paranormalpop channel. If you are a fan of coffee like I am, don't forget to use the Mystery 20 code on the Alien Coffee Bean website to get a 20% discount. And if you do appreciate this program, Coffee and UFOs, and the new series that will be coming out soon on this channel, please consider supporting on Patreon. We'll provide some really interesting behind-the-scenes content that no one else is going to see ever, except for you if you become a Patreon supporter. So I would really appreciate that. If nothing else, if you are listening to the podcast, I would really appreciate if you could take the time to write a review and rate the review wherever you listen to your podcast. So thank you so much. And as always, everyone, peace and love, and live in the mystery.